he has built my faith in his faithfulness. And he's brought me this far. He's going to continue because that's who he is, not because I deserve it. His faithfulness is still contingent upon him, not me. I can still be unfaithful and he's going to show up that next day. I know that the answer to every single problem in life today, maybe not the specifics, is to be still. It is to get quiet before God, to surrender it all again, and to trust him for what's next.
Welcome back, everyone, to the podcast, the Audacious Faith Podcast, where we believe that we are to have the audacity in our minds, knowing that God put us on this earth not just to exist, but to make a huge difference in the world. Right now, we are in Chino Hills, California. I love these on-set location ones, and I have a very special guest today. But let me ask you as we get started, have you ever thought you had your life kind of all planned out? You're following the Lord, you're doing what you want to do, you're following the plan, and then there are unexpected detours. And you might even have found yourself in a situation where you go, what happened? I don't understand. Is life just totally like off track now? But the amazing thing about God is despite the unexpected detours in our life, he already knew. He already has a way to keep us on path and to take us to places that maybe we never would have gone even without it. We don't know. But we do know that he is in control and he continues to lead in our life. And that's going to be a lot of the subject of what we talk about today. Unexpected detours where God is still moving and moving clearly. My special guest today is Monique Driscoll. And thank you, by the way, for opening up your home and letting us come and kind of share a little time back and forth with each other today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's get right into it. People may know you, but a lot of people that are watching probably don't. So maybe just, give us not the 400 year story, but kind of how it all started, maybe a little bit about upbringing, family, and kind of how you came to faith.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I actually love the name of your podcast. I forgot to tell you that.
Oh, wonderful.
I love the word audacious.
Mm-hmm.
I think it sounds a little outrageous and unreasonable sometimes that people can look at our faith like that, because it doesn't often make sense in the
Sure.
natural sense. So
Yes.
I love the word. But yeah, my name is Monique. I lived here in Chino Hills, I think like 30 years. But I grew up with mom and dad and a brother and came to the Lord at a very young age. When my mom did, my dad took many years later after that. But not a perfect home because nobody has one. But I was loved well. And my parents did not have a perfect marriage. But at the end of the day, it brought a lot of stability of what the representation of marriage to me was supposed to bring. And so it wasn't something I knew like I had to go get, but I was excited that if I was going to do that, it was going to be definitely something that honored the Lord and probably in pursuit of ministry, and went on to Bible college and did meet somebody that I thought, if I really was going to do this thing, this whole marriage thing, it really would have to be somebody that challenged my faith. And this person had a faith that drew me in like nothing else. Like I was in awe, and even thought, if this person doesn't want to date me, I just want to know him, because the way he talked about the word of God and his relationship was very special. And so we did. We fell in love, got married, and we're both in ministry. When I met him, he was actually a youth pastor, and then also in business. So in pursuit of both things. And the business thing was actually kind of a surprise. Thought we would really just focus on ministry, even if we were going to be poor. This was going to be our road. And it kind of was that very audacious, peculiar, even if did it all hard, let's go. And that was very exciting to me. And so in time, he began to wrestle with some things that were going to lead to a lot of destruction in life. And that really began to break down the relationship and the marriage. And in that marriage, we had a wonderful son and 2 daughters. And when he decided to leave the marriage, a massive detour clearly came into my life.
Sure.
I would say before that, I had never even thought, as silly as it sounds, I had never even thought it was a possibility for my life.
Yeah.
That I had prayed about this type of relationship. I had sought counsel on this, dated 3 years, so it wasn't a quick thing, but I was very, very young. And the things maybe that when you are young and you don't know which red flags to look for, what to do with them when you even possibly see them, I didn't. I was very, just very naive to some of the things looking back now that I went, wow, that was something to probably look at or maybe to talk to someone about. But this life that I was very certain that I possibly even could say I thought I deserved because I had, quote unquote, in the Christian world, done it right. You know, I was doing everything I could to honor the Lord, honor my husband, honor my children. This would now be a beautiful life. Maybe not rich, maybe rich. Maybe not this or that, maybe no traveling, but we were going to love the Lord and stay married forever.
Yeah.
And that was going to then pass on to my children an incredible amount of security. And I guess security was a really big part to give them that home that my parents gave me.
Sure.
That even when we didn't have a lot or travel, I came home every day knowing mom and dad were there and what that gave to me, especially as a young girl to have a dad in the home. And so this word that now is going to be over my life, this detour of court, divorce, attorneys, child custody, all these things going left and right, I was probably screaming inside because this now, in my eyes, what I feel like the enemy will often whisper to you is now we're going to completely change your identity. Now you're not Monique, the wife, this whole family. It's a different label now. And what that will now mean to your kids is, oh, it's all going to go haywire. They are now probably not going to follow the Lord. They are now going to be, you know, just a big mess. And I could say as I started that detour, every fear inside of me that could exist really came. So I knew already I did not know what to do.
Yeah.
And though I've always been a person of prayer, prayer became like my whole existence. And I love prayer. Prayer is probably my favorite subject. I love reading books on prayer. I like to hear about how you pray. I like to talk about how I pray. I love corporate prayer, middle of the night prayer. But this was now going to be my life because I didn't know what to do.
Sure.
And so I took those vows very seriously. And I'll tell you one thing, I was very determined that divorce would not be part of my story, that I was now walking into a future I did not want. And I believed that God could heal anything and that he would. And I was believing for restoration, even though it looked like nothing was pointing that way. I still saw things that God was doing that I thought, well, maybe there's some hope in that change. Divorce brings an enormous amount of chaos and pain, disappointment on the hour, confusion over what you tell your kids and how that gets managed. And what that looks like even in the church.
Sure.
You know, how do I now go to church and everyone's like, where's your husband? So after a few months, I would say, like, I was very determined to not say, oh my gosh, like he just left. I was very determined to hold our family up high, not denial, not trying to hide it, but still trying to honor the Lord. How do I honor you, Lord, without just spilling in? So I actually found another church.
Okay.
Sometimes people don't realize like that can be part of your story too, where you might need to relocate and find something new where you can walk into it because it's not, I feel like there was a lot of respect for our family. People looked to the person I was married to for counsel, direction. He was a teacher in the church. And suddenly it's gossip time. I'm like, how did my life turn into gossip time?
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
And so it was really refreshing to find a new home, a church where nobody knew our story. And that obviously can present its challenges too. But this now story, this detour that it was going to take my children on that I thought could only be destructive. Let me just tell you, like when God allows detour, he has a plan the whole time.
Yeah.
And that this plan that God has planned for my family and these amazing kids, no matter what consequences were coming from somebody else's choices, God's plan was not going to shift. And that has been one of the most life-giving things I have lived, that God has a plan. And if you continue to pursue and lean in, he will continue to. Now, I don't want to sugarcoat it. I mean, my kids have a lot of pain. There's a lot of chaos.
Yeah.
But I would say today, do I have these 3 kids that are running hard after the Lord in spite of divorce or because of it? Probably a little of both.
I'm sure.
That they have grown to know what it is to lean into the Lord, to know that when provisions look scarce, what will happen? How did he continue to sustain them in their schools? And financially, divorce brings a lot of instability. And I had been a stay-at-home mom for 20 years. Going back into work and making very little of that creates a lot of challenge.
Right.
I remember as we were walking through some of it, and my son, I believe he was either the end of his freshman year, maybe sophomore year, his school does a lot of missions. And he said, Mom, they're going to do a Mexico trip. And I thought, oh, that's going to be expensive. It really wasn't too bad. And I thought we could do it. And we did. The next year it's, Mom, they're going to do a missions trip to Dominican Republic. And I thought, what's wrong with you? You know how stressed I am. Like this, we're barely doing this.
Yeah.
And he said, but Mom, they said like we could pray about it and God might provide for this. And I thought, oh, this is so stressful.
They threw the prayer card at you, huh?
Yep. And I still remember being in the drive-thru at McDonald's, him telling me this. And I thought, oh, here we go. And did we pray? And did God show up and send that young man? And so I'm thinking, we checked it off the list. We're done. And the next year, Mom, they're going to Kenya, Africa. And I'm like, clearly, Jake, you're not paying attention.
They have to keep planning bigger
God
and
may
bigger
have,
trips.
yes, God may have provided twice, but I don't know about this time.
Yeah.
And let me just tell you, did the Lord show up on the last hour of the hour? Absolutely. And then, of course, this now inspires my daughter, who's like, Mom, they're going to Uganda, Africa. I'm like, shouldn't we start at Mexico?
Right.
But it always seemed that each thing that the Lord kept doing, he was building our faith in God's faithfulness. Each time it was just an opportunity. It wasn't like, oh no, how are we going to find $3,000 for? Well, the truth is, if God is going to call your kid somewhere or yourself somewhere, whatever God is doing, he provides despite it.
Right.
And I remember my daughter one time saying, Mom, I kind of feel bad for some of the kids whose dad just writes the check and they get to go. And I'm like, feel sorry. That kind of sounds amazing. Let's do that road. But she knew that the real big growth part was before she even hit the airport.
Yeah.
It was praying and believing. It was getting a pink slip at school saying, she'll be kicked out of the program by Monday if there's not the second deposit. And then what would happen? You get the phone call, an anonymous donor of something. And what God was doing to specifically raise up my kids to know, in many ways, was their dad paying the bills? Yes. But he was not our source. God is our source.
Yeah.
And he is a resource. And for us to get to learn that, it was beautiful that this detour, God was still preparing the way and providing and covering the entire time. And I remember early on, it's funny that we say detour because I was listening to a study on that. And I remember the teacher saying, because I kept thinking still, what do I do? And how do I do? And he was saying how God shows us in scripture that don't worry so much about you, even the prayers for you. Go reach others. This is a time and a season for you. And I'm thinking, well, that does not sound reasonable at all.
Right.
I really need to focus on me and these kids right now, whether it be on prayers or serving or finances. But I thought, okay, well, let's do that. And I'm thinking, where am I going to find because he said, serve in your own need. So I thought, how do I find a bunch of women whose husbands have left, It's amazing.
That's not hard, probably, yeah.
I agree. It is amazing how in minutes, how that just started flooding into my life. And that kind of started really becoming a big part of my world. That women would come to me that maybe they had heard of my story, that I was standing for my marriage, that I was believing for restoration, that I knew of the power of prayer, and they didn't know me directly, but Monique, I know somebody who knows somebody. Can they call you? These things were happening, and I was encouraging these things. And my faith would grow as I was praying for others and ministering to others. I think that is what's so fascinating in these detours, is that God's economy is so different in that we are uplifted and lifted up and filled up as we reach others.
Yeah.
And though I've always served and I love ministry, I think it takes your own personal pain to see other people's pain. It takes
The empathy.
it
Yeah.
the openness
Can't
of
get-
what is going on. I remember going to the grocery store early on and just feeling like I was going to cry, and I couldn't even get to the stand. And I thought, if I'm feeling this way, there's countless people in this big grocery store that have always felt this way. And
Yeah.
I never thought about it. I'm here to buy groceries. But in that day, I could barely breathe. And I thought, I wonder if there's other people right now that feel that way, whether they got a diagnosis, financial collapse, a child that didn't come home last night, that people are hurting. And when you're hurting, you just have a sensitive heart toward those things. And when I began to see that in my own kids, that they could recognize the pain with other kids, once again, I was like, wow, Lord, this detour, it's kind of horrible and painful and full of chaos. And yet I see the beauty of what you are doing to raise up this next generation to know you and to reach others. Like, he wastes nothing. And so I did continue for years, actually, to stand for my marriage. It would get blocked, denied. I wouldn't go through. And I thought, God is going to do something really great to heal this. And I continued to try to show love at opportunities I could. And there would be court dates and I would give it over. But I do remember after several years, a night before a court date, and I love to do a little bit of like a return to some faith areas.
Okay.
And I drove to the hospital my daughter was born, where I saw the very first physical miracle I've ever seen, because it built my faith to just sit in that parking lot, remember what God had done.
Yeah.
And then I drove to this Taco Bell where I sat when one day we had to move suddenly. And the night before we had to move, I still had no place to take my kids. And that sitting in that Taco Bell parking lot, I remember getting the phone call. You have a house, Monique, like more than what you asked for. And it's going to be great, right on time, the last hour,
Okay.
trusting God. And I drove to the church where I was married. And I sat in the parking lot all those years later, and I gave it all back. And I said, Lord, it was never my marriage. It was your marriage. And if we walk in court tomorrow and the whole thing goes through and I'm officially divorced, that you'll be on the other side of divorce, and I'll trust you in that. And I don't want to walk into this future. And if there's anything you want to do, if you want to pull out one of those great miracles now, like, let's go. I was still very willing.
Yeah.
And the next day did come, and the judge did sign the decree for that. And that was now going to be part of my journey.
Right.
But as I've often shared, I really do hate a label. And this thing of this D word that I just despised, and I just went kicking and screaming. It was not going to be part of my story. And if God is so able, why was he not willing? And at the time, I didn't see it this way, that my marriage was not restored. But in many ways, I was rescued out of something that I didn't know I needed rescue. And his plan was still not going to be changed. He was still going to build my faith and use our family, maybe even greater than had it stayed. And that I realized that, my favorite, I have so many favorites, but one of my favorite teachers, Charles Stanley, he uses this phrase very famous for, obey God and leave the consequences to him. And he says his grandfather one day told him, like, basically, like, if God tells you to run toward a brick wall and put your head first, it's God's job to create a hole in the wall for your head to go through so you don't die. And it sounds completely unreasonable.
Yeah, it does.
Except the point is, like, in obedience, if God says it, it's his job. The results are on him, the consequences of whatever your obedience is. And I knew I wanted to give my kids this gift, that I made these vows that, like you said, even when I stood up there at those vows, God knew what was coming ahead of time. And I wanted to live that out to the very end, for better or for worse. I wasn't going to be accountable for divorce. It didn't want this. It's an unwanted divorce. But there was no stopping that, and that he would use it for good. And so I gave all that back to the Lord. That went through, and I felt released from, I did my part. I did my part. And still today, it still feels very tragic. The consequences that come from divorce are so hard. And it's that part, I guess, when you're walking through as a believer, as a Christ follower, forgiveness is such a big part of our life. And how do you just say all of this chaos, all of this pain, all of the consequences? How does that just go, okay, forgive? It's really not like that. And
Sure.
even though I've known the Lord my whole life, I had to really ask those questions. What does forgiveness look like? And how in the world do I do it when there's been so many wrongs? And I saw it as this two-step process. Forgiving the act of what somebody did, but then there's also you have to forgive the continued consequences that will come from what was done.
Right.
Because now my kids will have a completely different life, right? And the enemy will definitely begin to speak that over you. Your kids will now come from a legacy of divorce. My kids don't come from a legacy of divorce. They come from a legacy of a house of prayer. They come from a legacy of great faith. They come from a legacy of love. They come from a legacy of people who have prioritized family in a beautiful way and came together in really challenging times. And I'm really proud of that. But it doesn't mean I don't still hear that
Of course.
spoken over.
We hear those voices all the time, right? So you're touching on some things that I'm picking up through what we've been talking. First of all, I just want to say that I'm appreciative of your sharing your story because of the fact that there's a lot of people out there that have gone through similar things, detours, unexpected. Maybe they look back going, just like you're saying, this is not anything I ever wanted, not anything I ever pursued, and yet it happens. And I know that people react differently. It's probably very tempting as you hear those different voices in your head. People struggle with even being angry at God sometimes, I'm sure. Why? You mentioned it already. You're so in control and you can stop this, so why did you
Yes.
not? Even though I'm praying, even though I'm checking off all the boxes I'm supposed to be doing. I was thinking of Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, which I think you basically touched on just a little. And when you were talking about leaning, and when it says lean not on our own understanding, but the idea, I believe, is we're leaning not on us, but we're leaning completely on Him,
Yes.
because we don't understand it. I think in your situation and many other situations, God did not cause it, but God knew it, and then He walks. I think you've experienced Him walking through it with you,
100%.
right?
Yes.
And so how important is that? Because there's going to be people that literally they look and all of a sudden it seems like life is chaotic, out of control. You mentioned the trepidation, going to the different places and thinking, what's going to happen tomorrow? This is not what I want. How is lean? I mean, there's points I think where you just don't get it. So you felt, I'm assuming, the walk that He walked with you through the fire.
100%.
Yeah.
I often hate when people say things like, oh, well, they're going through this, or the Lord knows. I mean, I could never go through that. Or loss of a child, or, oh, thank God would never allow that in my life because He couldn't. And I think that, I love when we study, Paul cries out, he says, Lord, take this from me. And we still don't really know what it is. He asks like 3 times, don't let this, like,
With Paul, yeah.
don't let's not, please, whether it was a physical healing, no matter what it was. I love that it's not even known what he was asking for, but he does ask God to do it, and He doesn't do it. And he says, my grace is sufficient. And there was a time I just read that as a scripture. I love all the scriptures. It's good, another story. But then it really becomes real. And when I think of that in my situation of this detour, is that what He calls you to, okay, now He didn't want divorce for me, but He definitely entrusted me with this pain,
Sure.
with this family to raise up, knowing that I'm a very fearful person. But what He did with His grace is that He gave me His presence and His voice in a way that I really do believe only shows up in those types of times. That I used to think, wow, if my life was skipping and I was pursuing the Lord, could I have this like this? In my situation, the number one thing people usually are so panicked about is loneliness. So I'm never lonely. I don't know how to explain that. I'm not in denial. I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything. I would say this, though, that when you lean in, his grace that is sufficient for me is that he comes up in an extraordinary way to give me his presence because I don't have that partner. He knows that I don't know what I'm doing regarding raising children or how to pay the bills like this. But his grace comes in extra with greater guidance. And sometimes it is like that still small voice or when I open the scriptures, but often the fact that he doesn't walk among us, he sends beautiful people into your life, mentors, speakers, teachers, a friend's mother, my own parents, love and support that walk alongside you. And that is him coming alongside us to
Right.
support us, to redeem these things that we can't fix, to make sure, like, if you want to look at me and say, well, she's alone, I want to say that's okay. It's not okay. It's a lie. I have
Okay.
not one day walked alone. And when you lean in, especially to help others, it will fill your life up. And I'll tell you, the challenge can come in through these women that I've been able to encourage. I have seen restored marriages. And sometimes I want to raise my hand and go, Lord, but his ways are better.
Right.
And though today I would say, I would never take away the responsibility that that man did walk out on his family. At the same time, I see the grace of God that he picked him up and removed him because it would have been some things that would have been destructive for our future. And he allowed my kids to be raised in a home set apart from that.
Yeah.
And that was his grace, even though it only looks bad. Depends on how you're looking at it. How do you define bad? And more importantly, how do you define good? If he says, I withhold no good things from those who walk uprightly. But what if good is allowing pain in my life so that I lean in more? What if something that's so difficult to walk through, he says, but Monique, it'll make you so desperate that, you won't decide whether you're going to open up the scriptures tomorrow because you're so needy, Monique. You're so needy. And I love it because you keep coming to me. And that's where the beauty has been. I heard someone say one time they went through a really hard time and they said, I wouldn't have missed that for the world. And I thought, that's so dumb. I would never say that. I want to miss all the pain. They're so spiritual. But I would say today, and I'm still in the midst of a lot of chaos that comes, I would say today, like, I wouldn't have missed this for the world. That my job was never to stay married forever. My job was to obey the Lord. And whatever result comes from that. And, we all love Romans 8:28, that God works all things together for good. But keep reading. 29 says to conform us into his image.
Right.
And I would say that I have lived in many ways a life of fear in so many areas of my life. And he was going to say, we're going to be brave. We're going to make brave decisions. And I would try to convince the Lord, that's not my personality. I'm scared. Did you not get the memo? Remember how I'm always crying about everything? And then instead of removing that challenge in front of me, that I was scared. Court was not supposed to be attached to my name, but it was. I was going to have to go to court and stand up for myself. And I was going to have to walk teenagers through really challenging times. I was scared to do it all. But he was there in his sufficiency to do that, and that's been the beauty from it.
It seems to me, I'm just picking up as we're talking, okay? If it looks like I'm kind of like my wheels are turning, it's because different things that you're saying, I'm just getting. And I mean, we don't know each other very well, obviously, but this is what I'm picking up. Because early on in the conversation, you said things about you were very attracted to the person that he was as far as his commitment to the word, as far as how he led people, as far as how he was a youth pastor at the time, all these different things. And that really drew you, okay? And I'm just picking up that a lot of where God is taking you now, things he's having you do, not only responsibilities that you're covering that you never thought you would. You mentioned, all of a sudden going back into the work and doing, getting out there after 20 years. I know you minister with a lot of women and a lot of different people at this particular point. Obviously, through your experiences, he has equipped you or put you in a place of understanding to be able to do that. a lot of the impact that you're having, which I know you are, and the impact that's still yet to come. Without this detour, how does that go? I mean, I'm sure you would have still had impact, but different.
I would say very different and limited. And I think sometimes when I see the things that we're doing as a family, I just wonder how much life would have been so self-focused.
For a lot of people, it is.
Very,
right?
where it's usually that opposite part of I love how much seeing my daughter who just turned 23 last week. She just graduated college and her girlfriend's father passed on Sunday.
Okay.
And I mean, the first thought wasn't how even sad my daughter was. It was like, Mom, where and how do we reach her? Is it with just prayer? Is it just listening? What kind of gift do we take? Like leaning into that. I love seeing that. My daughter is beautiful, but like who she is beautiful. And that beauty came from a lot of pain and understanding and seeing other people's pain. I hate how much pain is part of life, but what amazes me and literally thrills me is that it's where he does his greatest work in our lives. And so are there days, I'm saying a lot like right, but are there days that I'm completely just super angry and just so disappointed again and kind of crying out, forgetting my faith, going, what are you going to do this time to save us? Yeah, like there's still those days.
Sure.
But that redeeming part of, like you say, I wonder, I think about it a lot. I wonder who we'd be today. Would it just be about what vacation are we going on this summer and like what kind of car can we get our kids at 16? Well, I can't do that, you know? And God still shows up and provides in many ways. But I love how much our lives are focused on others. It's beautiful. And so my life today isn't even so much for the first time, though I've always done ministry inside the church. It's not in the church right now. I just kind of wake up every day and think, just send me someone at some point that, help me to see them in that pain. And my kids are the same way now too. And it's kind of extraordinary. People often say, that teenage years are the worst, but they were my favorite in really trying difficult times. And today my son is 26. My daughter just turned 23. And my youngest, Lily, is 17. She's graduating high school.
Okay.
And it all has been harder than I thought it would be. And it all has been better than I thought it would be.
Both at the same time.
Both at the same time. Because the beauty that, raising children, it's also discipleship, and my influence on them was going to matter. And I could have stayed super bitter that how could you show them this unfaithfulness to a family? No, Lord, this is now who they're going to be and what they'll know. Like they shouldn't know these things as young kids. Or I could stand up and say, I have an opportunity to show them faithfulness to this family. And then I will show up at everything and sacrifice everything I have to make sure they know that they, our big thing in our home is that you are chosen. And I try to say the message to them and to anyone. My husband at the time leaving did not unchoose me. I am chosen already. I was chosen before I said I do, chosen by the Lord. And so as we wrestle identity, those detours can really mess with your identity of that, or at least try to, that I'm now unwanted or unchosen. Absolutely not. Right. Somebody else's choices does not change who God says I am. And I speak that over them and any kid that they'll bring into our home that I, try to reach to, that this is who he says you are.
Now, you bring up a great point because a lot of people that are listening right now, whether it's divorce or any other area, I think the temptation, you mentioned the voices that we hear. We hear the still small voice of God, but we also hear the evil one.
Loud.
Just,
so loud.
Yeah, and a lot of it is it just feeds on our own insecurities and just pushes the right buttons. So I know that there's people that just really beat themselves up, where they're saying, this has got to be because I failed. This has got to be because I messed up. This has got to be because of me somehow. And they don't feel favored at this point. They feel broken. And I'm sure brokenness is a part of it. I think everyone, honestly, you probably agree with me on this. If we study through and we look at people that God has used greatly, there's brokenness everywhere.
For sure.
It's always a part of the story. It seems that I can't really ever think. Do you know of anyone that's been used greatly by God who goes, wow, it was just smooth sailing from the beginning. I
Right.
planned my life out and everything just happened according to plan. In fact, so often these plans that we have,
Yes.
I mean, what does it say in Jeremiah 29? He says, I
Yes.
know the plans I have. It doesn't say, I know the plans you have.
Yep.
And so a lot of times people are so like they're knocked off this
Yep.
plan
Yep.
and they literally just flail on the sidelines for years. Like, what happened? Okay. So I love what you're saying about understanding that, wait a minute, it didn't change who you are. In fact, in many ways, you're now doing things, and we would encourage others again, okay, God, what are you going to do through this then?
Yes.
What's
What are you
next?
up to?
Yeah, what's next? Where do I go from here?
Yep.
Because just staying off in a corner and being sad for the rest of my life is definitely not what you want. So what am I supposed to do?
Yes. Yes, that can be quite challenging. I would say today, I really don't know what's next or how to even figure it out or make it happen. My life was at home raising kids, and I poured everything into that and sacrificed everything I could for them, which is a beautiful thing.
Sure.
But yet now I'm trying to figure out, like, this is something I feel like we don't talk enough about, especially in the church. How do you do that? What does that look like? In some beautiful ways, I could say the possibilities seem endless. And yet the reality of this is still a future I did not choose, and I don't want to go that way. But we are going that way. This is what's happening. And I've watched him take these kids and now launch them into beautiful lives. And I know that he has that for me too. And sometimes I looked at it too, like, look at all the sacrifice. Like, where's mine? And I realized today, like, my reward might not come in the most flourishing, fruitful career. My reward is Jesus. My reward is this relationship that I've always had, but that we've built in an extraordinary way that I wouldn't change for anything. My reward is being able to have a relevant testimony that if I can share with someone, maybe it's not about divorce, I have a lot of friends with cancer.
Yeah.
To be able to pray with such confidence, knowing that I've seen God heal. I know this is who he is. And whenever we get an opportunity to just be able to tell somebody, this is who he is, I don't know if he'll do it. Like, I've prayed for this one, for their marriage to be restored, and it was. I prayed for mine, and it wasn't. Same thing with cancer. I've seen a friend of mine who had ovarian cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. She had a brain cancer. She had so many multiple cancers. Everyone, including her doctors, could have just said, well, let's just plan for this is going to end. She's completely healed, thriving in this world today. But my really good friend, her husband, was a beautiful man of God. He passed.
Yeah, it happens all
We
the time.
don't know what he's going to do. But I would say this. I mean, we might as well ask, right? I have a dad, and I just think, I can't imagine if I had a need and I sat at home and just complained about it, and he didn't say, Monique, why didn't you call me and say that this is, that I can help? He would feel so bad. And I think that we go to the Father, not as a piggy bank or not as Santa Claus, but we got to ask. And my thought is, I remember someone saying, you don't want to go to heaven, and him saying, I had so much more. You just didn't even ask. Sometimes, since I love prayer so much, people will say, well, if he already knows everything, why do we even pray?
People say that a lot.
All the time.
Yeah.
And that because he loves relationship. And I think the same thing is that I know a lot of things that my daughter wants right now. But you know what I love? When she comes and sits with me on the couch and says, Mom, this is coming up. Prom is coming up. Can we go prom shopping? Like, I know we're going to go prom shopping, but I love it that we're talking about it and when we're going to go and what she wants. And I want to delight her in what she wants. The thing is that I wanted a restored marriage. And God said, I'm going to give you what's best for you. And what's best for you is not that road. Finding peace with that, it's taken me a long time. I have sat in the house and cried and just wondered once again, how did this happen to me when I planned so well? And what I didn't know as a young believer was that we can plan well and be obedient to God all day long. And he can still allow challenges. And the beauty of it is he's saying, I'm going to go with you. I'll be with you.
Yeah.
And we're going to be not scared at everything at the end of this. We're going to find bravery, you know. It's going to be a long road.
Long road. Now, you mentioned something that was really good as well. You said that some of that ministry that God is taking to is not necessarily in the church. And to some people, especially traditionally thinking, that can blow their mind. It's
Sure.
like, wait a minute, doesn't all ministry take place inside the church? In fact, isn't it true that maybe just as much, if not more, takes place outside the walls of the church?
For sure.
Right? Now, I'm definitely not against church as a pastor myself, but you know, and I wish more people would actually show up. That's a little plug I'm putting out there. but at the same time, let me say this: I would be very naive and very wrong to say that everything that God is going to do is going to take place within these walls at these hours and these days.
Yep.
You know, that's really a place where we get refreshed, equipped, worship,
To
get
go
out there, and we're supposed to be the light of the world, right?
Yes.
So everywhere you go, then people need to start looking at it this way. You're talking about how God just keeps, who's he going to lead me to?
Who's he going to lead me to?
Right, and that's everywhere. That's in the restaurant. That's in a
Everywhere.
grocery store.
Yes.
That's somebody you pass on the road.
Yes. Yes. I think about, so I remember someone making a comment to me and said, wow, Monique, you know, a lot of people with a lot of problems, like as if somehow like I was attracting all the weirdos or something. But no, I think that I was, like I said, in this detour, my instruction was, I took it very seriously and I just started leaning in and saying yes. And before I looked at things more reasonable. That's too far. That might cost me some extra gas money. I might look foolish if I went up to that stranger right now who looks like they're hurting and just asked them like if they're okay and if I could pray for them. Like I didn't do things like that before. But I'll tell you, like when I act out in an area where I feel like God has led me to, like I've never been high in life, but it is a high of no other high.
Right.
It is life-giving. It brings purpose to your life. And it might even seem like a small thing and you have no idea what God does with it on the other end of that.
Yeah,
You know.
absolutely. So you're seeing this. You're seeing things that you probably never would have done. You're still young. You still got well, of course we don't know, but
Right. One more day or 20 more years.
but I like your perspective. I think more people need the perspective of not retreating but pushing forward. There's that leaning into the tape. There's that, you know. I personally feel that the older we get, I'm only speaking for me here, not you, but the older I get at least, I'm thinking I don't want to run slower. I don't want to be winding down. I actually want to run faster. You know, because it's like there's things we're supposed to do. Okay. So for you, looking at it on this side of the perspective now, I think I want to shift to that a little bit because too many people that have gone through things like they're listening to right now, they're just kind of like, well, life blew up, so I'm done. I'm just going to survive. I don't think that's it. I know that's not where you are. So where are you? You said you're not sure yet, but is there that drive now that's pushing you forward?
Well, I would say that I'm a very slow learner. So I have done a lot of what you said. I've gotten myself stuck many a times, whether it was just wanting to understand why or wanting to understand things that were never really going, or even if there was an answer, it wasn't going to be enough. I have gotten that place stuck. And as I've pursued healing, still trying to understand what that is, I think that comes in many ways in itself of some counseling, staying in the Word. But what will always propel me forward is the truth. And because the challenges that we face in life, no matter what they are, we do hear God's voice. And yet, like you said, the enemy's voice is so loud. It is, there is no future for you. It is, I mean, as a believer, that D word over your head right now, who's going to want to be part of that? It is that there really is no tomorrow. And the truth, though, will always combat it. The truth is so powerful. So to know what God says about my future, that maybe things won't ever get built up back in my life financially. Maybe I'll never own another home again or these types of things. But the fact is, reality is that the best is yet to come because heaven always awaits me.
Sure.
I don't know what type of, he hasn't promised me that, hey, this thing is all going to end with everything secure and you're going to be, I don't know. Those things that maybe we would want that we think look secure. But my relationship with Jesus is secure. Having a strong relationship with my children is secure. People often look at it like remarriage is the answer. I don't think so. I don't think that my life will look redeemed because of a person. My life is redeemed because of what the Lord has done for me and continues to do to bring about all the good from all of the bad.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm knocked down the pride enough just to say I don't know what tomorrow looks like, but I know this for sure. I know that I always want to be a person who's encouraging another person, willing to meet a need, opening my home to whoever. I know that that is what has made my life rich. And if you look at my bank account today, you would not say rich. But I think that people find the richness in our life and what we've built, me with my kids, and hold us in high esteem from that.
Right.
And those are the things that starting out this adventure and this detour I thought could not be. I hate words like, as I talked about, I hate labels, broken family. They're a broken family. We're not a broken family. We are a family that is more stronger today than we ever were before,
Right.
even though there's a lot of pain here.
Well, there's a lot of quote unquote whole families, the way people would phrase
Right.
it, that are very broken.
And I think that we look
Yeah.
at it like that way in the church sometimes,
Yes, so absolutely. You're mentioning you've had times, and I know others have well, where we said, okay, I don't understand. I want to make sense of this. Have you sensed God sometimes saying, just keep going. Eventually it'll make sense? I'm sure there's pieces of the puzzle that have made sense. You mentioned earlier, and we've revisited this theme over and over again in the podcast, that God doesn't waste anything. He really doesn't. But I'm sure there are stages of realization when now you suddenly were able to help someone. Now you suddenly were able to do something that you never would have done. And you're like, oh, okay, now that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm a person who loves understanding. I want to understand. And I think that in our journey and our walk with the Lord, that's not how it works. He doesn't promise us, oh, I'm going to make sure, really concerned that Monique understands. He says, whether you like it, agree with it, or even want it, I'm asking you to obey this. And I look at it like the same way with my kids. I want my kids to understand. I want them to like it, agree with it. But at the end of the day, if it's for their safety or for their good, I'm just going to say, do it. Do it. Do it now. And it's the same way with him, is that it's true. We are not promised to understand or get it. I would say in God's grace and kindness toward me, there was a lot of things I didn't know in the beginning. And I think he just knew she's not ready for that. And as time went on, things were more revealed, more understanding of why things were happening and why we even needed divorce, needed to be a necessary part of my story. I look at that and go, oh, why did it take so long? And I thought, well, he's so purposeful. He's such an intentional father that he was waiting, allowing me to heal from some things, to grow in some things, and probably predominantly to trust him more. I remember the first time I didn't, for the first time in a chaotic moment, go, where are you? Why are you allowing this and that and that? I knew right where he was. He was right here, holding me up and ready to lead to the next thing.
Lead to the next thing. That's key. And that's kind of this very thought that I was just going at right now. I had this little imagery in my head of when we're children. Okay. And obviously you've had children too. And children lead a different life than adults, right? Adults, we get older and then we start scheduling, planning. We're going to, sit down with our goals, get it all there.
Sure.
We were taught early in ministry, I'm sure you were too, get your 1-year plan, your 3-year plan, your 5-year plan. That's a joke, isn't it? I mean, it never happens that way, right? But when we were children, this is what I remember. We got up and all we knew, we didn't know what we were going to do. We just knew we were going somewhere. And so we go to our parent and it'd be like, so what are we doing today?
Yep.
And it was, every day was kind of an adventure. We didn't know. Has that changed, really? I mean, if we look at it that way,
So true.
we keep trying to schedule it out. But even when I asked you, what's next? What are you pursuing?
Yep.
Maybe we don't always need to know.
No. I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I do know who I want to be and who I want to continue to become. I do know where I want to put my time and my finances and my life's focus. I do know those things.
Yeah.
I don't have those specifics. And maybe that's the grace too, is that even at the beginning of my journey, had he told me how long it was going to take, or had he told me some of the things we would face, and if he said, trust me in this, I probably think I would have said, no, because you are not good and this does not look good and there's no way. But when we are convinced, when we live a life that is convinced of the goodness of God, I have a teacher I love. She often says, God is good to me, and God is good at being God. Because sometimes pain can cloud all the information and theology I learned in life, right?
Sure.
But if you can just rest in his goodness and be convinced of it. Like I said, there's a verse I always tease that I resent in Proverbs 31 where it says, like, she laughs without fear of the future. Well, that makes me want to laugh going, no, I fear the future. I fear it. It's so insecure. But the truth is, he has built my faith in his faithfulness, and he's brought me this far. He's going to continue because that's who he is, not because I deserve it. You know, his faithfulness is still contingent upon him, not me.
Right.
You know, I can still be unfaithful, and he's going to show up that next day. So, yeah, I don't know what tomorrow looks like, but I know that the answer to every single problem in life today, maybe not the specifics, is to be still. I would say I don't have any tattoos. If I ever were to get one, it's going to be still. It is to get quiet before God, to surrender it all again, and to trust him for what's next. You know, that's a big part of it.
So here's a phrase that just came to my
Okay.
mind. It's probably not original, but it seems original to me. I don't know where I'll be going, but I know who I'll be going with.
I'm
Right?
very certain of that.
Yeah.
Very certain. And that is the greatest gift for all of it. Even with my kids, as they're getting launched, I'm like, I can't go anymore. Like but I love how much that right now, even as we sit here, the Lord is with my kids where they're at in their workplace or whatever they've decided to do today. I know today that the Lord is with the man that I married. And maybe I didn't know how to reach him. The Lord knows exactly how to reach him. And I love how much that part of just his presence will continue to go and be. And yeah, that's the beauty of him, that nothing is impossible with him. And even though I got the no that I didn't think I'd get, I'm still really glad that I held fast to what he called me to. And he called me to be faithful in that. Even when I was misunderstood, mocked as I continue to wear a wedding ring, because I was going to continue to walk that road. That's a big part of my story, but it's not my whole story. Like, you know, there's more. You know, marriage was not my purpose. Being a mother is not my purpose. And there's more to come. That is the beauty of
Definitely
tomorrow.
more to come.
Yeah.
Now, you know, this has been a great conversation and really appreciate you opening up and sharing. I know it's such a blessing to people to hear. I'm gonna leave. We're gonna kind of wrap down, but I want to give you an opportunity, kind of in an open question, because I don't know how God's leading, and I don't know who's gonna be listening to this and when. But there's somebody out there who's going to be watching, and they're literally in shell shock at the moment. You know, it seems, what happened to my life?
Yeah.
You know, they have no idea where to go, and maybe they turned this on because they basically were just looking for something, some kind of answer. I know you don't know the exact answer specific, But as the Lord would lead you, because that's what he does, I'll let you, you can go ahead and look right at the camera if you want. And what, as far as the difference that is what God needs to make in their life right now, when everything's chaotic, what would the Lord be leading you to tell them?
Well, I first would say that, as I spoke earlier, that whatever you're facing today, that your identity and who you are, that you are chosen. And nothing changes what God says about you. And that whether it is some sort of financial problem, a relational problem, a physical problem, a health issue, that fear will try to take you out. There is an intention for that. But the Lord will make you brave and strong and courageous if you lean into him. And there's something that I actually wanted to share, that it's something that I actually probably speak over my own life several times a week. I still love it, and it makes me encouraged, and to remind myself of what he can do in and through me and what he calls me to be brave when you're facing that diagnosis or facing not knowing how to reach a child who's just completely out of control, whatever it is, or depression. And one of my favorite teachers, she had spoke this at a conference, and I have spoken it now several times over myself. It says, being brave is not always something that you feel, it's something that you do. You do it in the face of fear with unknown outcomes, and you do it when the enemy is staring you down with taunting statements of defeat. You do brave not to prove that there is something great inside of you. You do it because if you don't, something inside of you will die. You do brave things because it's time to rise up and speak up and let truth find its freedom with your voice. The hurt you have had to overcome is hard, really, really hard. What happened to you is wrong. Acknowledge it, speak it, cry over it, but don't die over it. You've been hurt, but you don't have to live hurt. You do brave things because you are a woman or a man who can kneel humbly and rise intentionally. And you can find good people, and good people will find you. And you'll do brave until you become brave. And you'll know laughter again. And you'll know deep in your bones that you won't waste what you have learned. Your life is not a tragedy, it is a testimony that God is your rock and your redeemer. And if your hands are shaking, let it only because you are pointing at the devil who messed with the wrong girl this time. And that is a reminder of not anything, once again, about who I am, but what he can do in and through our lives to redeem a detour and continue his great plan.
Amen. Amen. Well, Monique, thank you so much for
Thank
sharing
you.
today, again, opening up your home. This has been a great podcast and a great discussion. And we do want to encourage each one of you out there that maybe you're going through something that you don't even understand. And I think we've explained today that sometimes we won't all understand everything as it just lines itself up. But God is still working. God is in control, and God still has big, huge plans. Monique, let me ask you this. If someone was touched by your story and maybe just wanted to reach out to you to get some feedback, is there like an email or some type of contact that you would like them to use to do that?
Oh, sure. I have my email is it's my kids laugh at me, but it's mamacita with an S, mamacita3 at email.com, or also on Instagram.
That's fairly easy to
Another
do.
mamacita, yeah.
That's easy to remember. That's a good one. Okay, so feel free to reach out, and I know you'll get back to them if something
For
there
sure.
could be somebody out there. And also, we want to encourage you to share this. There may be people in your life that you know would be definitely encouraged by this particular episode. So make sure you share it with them, and also please subscribe so that you don't miss any of the episodes, because we're going to have so much more to come as well. And there's a lot of past ones that you won't want to miss either. And so may God bless each one of you, and know that he has always got something big, and we got to step into it every single day. We'll see you next time on the Audacious Faith Podcast. Take care.